Hello and welcome back, everyone. I would call this session 2, but after playing around with my recording setup, because OBS was not working out very well with frame rate drops and all sorts of performance issues, at least in recordings, I've switched over to the AverMedia's native recording software, at least for console recording. And we'll get back to that in a second. Let's hear Dorman again. My next foe is it cast a colossal shadow across the misty lake. As it soars through the sky, to reach it is no easy task. So yeah, I fucked up a bit and didn't set my hotkeys quite right, and I ended up killing, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4 Colossi without the software recording because I did not set it up properly. So, there's not going to be any trophies until we get to Colossi 9. Isn't that fun? Well, the one upside is maybe I can be a little more articulate when it comes to some of the things I spoke on, as well as observations, etc., etc. And this time I did take the opportunity, very much so, to go and get rid of some lizards and some fruit, and so my health bar and stamina bar are bigger than they were last time. So that should make this a little bit easier. I also had a problem because I didn't save properly. Well, I saved properly, but I accidentally had the autosave go over my backup, or what I thought was my backup, and, well, I had to replay through the opening 4 Colossi again, but thankfully I love this game, and now that I have the controls a hell of a lot better down, I was able to fly through it. Same with these next few we're gonna be doing. It's also a bit later at night, but nothing I can't handle. So, new save slot, additional stamina and health. This should be a walk in a park. More or less is already, because I've played this game I don't know how many times, but alright, enough with the complaining. Let's stab some giants. Sorry, I'm for the dead air. Anyhow, this place is, I'd like to imagine it used to be some sort of, like, small city or group of temples, or one large temple, potentially, that eventually sank underwater, because as it stands now, I don't really see the function of it being built this way on purpose. The architecture reminds me of Something a bit of like old European churches, castles, that kind of general deal. Get a better look at it here in a second. Colossi number 5, Avion. I love this thing's design. It's one of the more fleshy colossi with its leathery skin and sort of bony protrusions in addition to its stone shell parts and its vertebrae and ribcage, which you may have noticed in its little intro video there. So you notice how a lot of this architecture brings more to like steeples and maybe castle walkways or just purely decorational. Like, this place wasn't meant to be underwater. I really wish I could swim a little faster. I think underwater is just a little bit faster, but on the surface, not so much. Alright, Liner. Okay. Now, something else I'd like to point out is, I'm sure some may have noticed, is that the Colossi, at least for a few of them, I'd say probably even the majority, they are rather peaceful and not outright aggressive, at least not at first. I mean, Avion here does not even care to acknowledge our presence until we attack it. Like so. Sorry about that. I was trying to catch a quick shot of Avion opening its mouth because, unlike the prior 4 Colossi, Avion actually has a mouth that can open and close. Which is almost a moot point, as far as we know, these things don't require anything to eat in order to live, so... Oh, and here's our first sigil. Oh. I think I accidentally let go of the button a little too quick. Like I said, it's a little later and slightly off my game, but I think we're gonna put this back together. Normally, when you do it long enough, Avion will drop you back at least closer to a set of platforms than this. Back to the bow. Alright, there it is. Nice little UI improvement I noticed that Blue Point went ahead with that I do not recall from either of the prior versions, is that when you're either you draw your bow or your sword to stab the Colossi sigils, once the stamina bar reaches its maximum point of force, leaving you with the max amount of damage, it glows brightly like a little sun. If you let go of the button before either that happens, it will not be doing your maximum possible damage. Ugh. Alright, Avion, let's get this over with. Oh, are you kidding me? Alright, let's go for another set of platforms. This one is not a great vantage point. Here I was thinking this was gonna go a little faster. Well, as long as we're down in the water, and trying to fill some time, Colossus was initially set to have 48 separate colossi, which is significantly higher than the final number, which is 16. And one of those was rather similar to Avion, in that it was a bird covered in flames, codenamed Phoenix. And much like Avion, it also took place near a lake or a large body of water, and the intent of the battle was to crash it into the lake and douse its flames so that you can get on top of it and stab its sigils. And back up we go. Oh, I did take care of all of it. Huh. Alright, to the other wing then. One of the things I really enjoy about Avion's design is how organic it stands out from many of the other colossi. And even though it's very clearly bird-like, the way its wings are leathery, it's studded with the spines and little bony protrusions here and there, and also notably the long tail that trails behind it, which we will be heading towards now. It's very draconic or wyvern-like. It's something like straight out of Monster Hunter, and I always appreciate that. I mean, look at this tail. If it were in Monster Hunter, you could just cut this off and carve the damn thing. If it was this size, though, it'd probably be 2 carves minimum. And there we go. After some minor player difficulty. Yeah, it reminds me like of French French cathedrals and churches like Notre Dame or something, giving these, God, I don't know what you call them, not quite arches. Feel like there has to be one large building or multiple underneath here. Can't really get a good look because even when you go underwater, the water's pretty murky and filled with silt. Thy next foe is... A giant lurks underneath the temple. It lusts for destruction, but a fool it is not. That's 5 Colossi down, on to number 6. For the second time tonight. Another thing I like to note coming up here, I'll stop and get closer, but there's some obelisks that don't quite match the previous architecture I was just talking about, and I feel like it's this blending of styles and appearances and things looking not quite the same pulls in with the Dorman / Nimrod thing, in that multiple cultures blended together, then spread apart. I mean, notice these large obelisks around the entrance to the forest here. Now these do appear in another area, but these aren't quite as meticulously sculpted and carved as ones we just saw in Avion's lair. Gushed about this last time, but this forest looks absolutely beautiful, and it's really fully realized in comparison to the forest in the PS2 / PS3 versions. Our safe one here. Let's hit it. And a thing that's also important to note. Oh, well, we're in a safe place here, but as we move back into the woods, you'll notice it's not quite as bright. Which feeds back into the point of how all these mini safe shrines that they are there to give you a light source so that you can find your way and go further. Which may be a contrast to what the main shrine of worship is, and that how it's supposed to be quote-unquote a source of light, but it's being invaded by shadowy creatures. Alright, let's see if I can find the spot I did last time. Okay. I found this cave by accident last time. I knew it existed, but I had no idea where it was. But this is not in either the PS2 or PS3 versions. This one is was added by Bluepoint, completely by themselves, and it has this little Easter egg here. This glowing barrel. This is a direct reference to Team Ico's third game, The Last Guardian. And these barrels, filled with this odd light, were used by the main character to feed Trico, the large cat, dog, bird, griffin creature. And as you fed him, he would regrow his horns and become more and more healthy after having his wings clipped during some point before the game started. They were also often surrounded by these little sort of almost glowing bioluminescent butterflies. They'd help you find them. They weren't a requirement for the most part. Many of them were pretty out of the way, but when you found them, it was always encouraged that you feed Trico in order to help increase your bond. Which brings me to another point here, is that Aggro, I, myself, and I'm sure plenty of others who play this enjoy the fact that she has a bit of her own AI and personality, making her unlike many other horses in video games. Very few seem to go down this route, but again, here she is, giving me a little difficulty. I'm just trying to get her to speed up. Alright, well, I can walk faster. Anyhow. She has her own AI personality. She knows when something is dangerous, and she will go out of her way to ignore it. Or rather, avoid it. And so if you try to go off a gap that would kill both of you, she will stop instantly once you get close enough to the edge. And it makes her feel more alive. Not like she's a motorcycle or a vehicle, or just with a different skin on it instead of animations. And that's greatly appreciated. Okay, so I went out of my way to look this up since I wasn't 100% sure last time I came through this area and started talking about it, but the Shadow and Shadow of the Colossus and Eco were bundled together in a remastered PS3 collection, also done by Bluepoint. It was nowhere near extensive as this, which is a full remake, and but anyhow, it was basically repainted the textures, fixed the frame rate since it's on better hardware, and most notably one of my favorite features, gimmick if you would like to call it that, of the Ico and Shadow of the Colossus collection is that it had 3D support, and that was the game that pushed me to buy a 3D TV. I don't use 3D TV anymore for my main setup. I switched over to 4K with HDR for the current gen, and well, next gen, which is in a few weeks, the launch of PS5. But and I think 3D in video games, for the most part, is done significantly better than the I'd say the vast majority of movies. I mean, how many 3D movies have you seen and it just feels like everything's sort of like cardboard cutouts being pasted onto different layers and barely noticeable, and they're not really trying to make it feel like it's coming right at you out of the screen like old school red and blue glasses were. I think it works significantly better in the video game medium, mostly because you have a sense of depth when you're in a 3D environment. Now, this is a little harder to do with something that's, say, 2D sprite-based, but for 3D games like Shadow Colossus, Eco, you feel like you're actually looking into a living world, even if everything's not quite popping out at you. Being able to have a greater depth perception, I feel like, really adds to the experience. And when it does pop, such as when I was fighting the first Colossi in the PS3 collection, I'd see its the weird platforms on its back coming through a TV, and the birds when they cross the camera. It really added to a sense of immersion and depth, and I mean, it really helps sell the sense of scale even more than it was prior. While I don't fully bemoan the loss of 3D, and I mean, like, and I'm glad that Nintendo dedicated an entire platform to it, even if most of us just turned it off, because either we just didn't care for it, or we wanted to preserve battery life, or for people that made them unfortunately sick or something. I appreciated the experiment. It's sad it doesn't really continue this day, and most TVs, unless you're really springing for it, don't have 3D built in, and the most place you're getting it now is just on 3D Blu-rays, and as I was saying, doesn't feel quite the same amount of effort or wow was put into them. So yeah, well 4K has become the new hot thing for video games, and I guess movies too, to a degree, though. What does it really matter when you're mostly in the theater and not talking about home media formats? Anyhow, I miss it to a degree. It increase the immersion and the readability of games. Oh. Colossi 6. Barba. Now, I was speaking when it came to Avion, how, it's a quote-unquote arena. Feels like it was an old temple, church sort of deal that was flooded over. While Barbara's case, this is very clearly some sort of arena that's closer to a prison than anything. And as such, I feel like this was built specifically to contain him, as not only is he very aggressive, but I cannot find any practical applications for this particular architecture. Like there's nothing here. Oop. That feels like it could be used by people for any use, like maybe holding water, but even then, why all these little walls and stuff? There's no particular point in that. Now, so we can get a good look at his design. This is Barba, Colossi number 6. He is very similar to Valis in that he is a minotaur shape, but unlike Valis, you'll notice that his legs and arms and all the like really aren't that hairy and we have nowhere to grab on, so we have to figure out a way to get to them. And once you know it, it was what I thought I had to do with Valis all the way back in the day. Know that he's also pretty fleshy. Still plenty of stony bits, obviously. But you can notice like a sort of organic vertebrae. Good lord, held still. Okay. Backing off for a second. Getting my stamina. I like that he's got these little rings hanging off of him, like they're some weird giant version of a facial piercings, even though who knows what those were for, if anything. They served any prior purpose. Sigil 1 and now Sigil 2. Oh boy. Big bony shoulder plates that can also look like rock, depending on how you choose to look at it. And oh, almost had a full charge. Contrast to Avion, he is aggressive. Well, he was. Bony rib plates there. Good night, bearded Colossus. And to me as well.